Evet değerli Art TV izleyenleri, bugün 3 Temmuz 2022 Pazar ve belgeselin sonuna doğru yaklaşıyoruz. Ben birkaç gündür mütemadiyen bütün mesaimi bu belgeseli çevirmeye hasrettim. Şimdi 1,5 saat kadar kısmı geride kaldı ama hala da 1 saatten fazla kısmı var. Ama tabii bu uzun ve çok yoğun bir belgesel ve ele aldığı konu da epik bir konu. Voyagerların seyahati ki bugün itibariyle 44 senelik bir mazisi var. Hala faaliyetini sürdüren bir proje. Tabii benim benim yaşımla takriben aynı ölçüde bir eskilikte bu. Dolayısıyla böyle bir projenin işlendiği bir belgeselin yorum yapılmaksızın bir solukta çevrilmesi düşünülemezdi. Ben de bunu uzun bir proje olarak ele aldım. Kısım kısım yorumlayarak, şerh ederek çevirmeyi düşündüm. Ve şimdi 40 kısımdan fazla yükledim ben bunu sisteme. Meraklısı onları izleyebilir. Bu arada Voyager'ların serüveni başlığıyla çevirdim ve Voyager'ların serüveninden sonra tire işaretiyle ayırdığım bölümün sayısını yazdım. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 43 falan gibi. Şimdi devam edelim. Satürn kısmını işlemiş miydik? Satürn'den bahsettik. Titan'a geçtiydik.
Take on metallic properties and may even be compressed into a solid. Saturn has a hot, rocky core. The planet radiates 2.5 times more energy out into space than it receives from the sun. Because of the unique combination of its massive size and rapid spin, Saturn is the most squished planet in the solar system. Its polar radius and its equatorial radius differ by nearly 10%. Saturn and Jupiter together hold 92% of all of the planetary mass in our solar system. Storms do occur on Saturn, though they are short-lived and difficult to catch. When they do happen, they appear as milky white fluid turbulence permeating across the otherwise featureless, banded face of the pale planet.
Bu konu hakkındaki eleştirilerimi ayrı bir yayında bildirdim. Dikkat ederseniz bu tür usturuplu şeylerin, usturuplu yalanların diyorum, tam doğru olmayan şeylerin izleyiciye yutkundu vermesinde genellikle uygulanan bazı formüller var. Bunlardan birisi musikidir. Musiki çaldığında insanların daha belki başka yetileri canlanıyor ama bazı insani melekeleri o an için işlevlerini tam yerine getiremiyor olabilir. Bu bağlamda bu belgeselin fonda çalan müziklerin incelenmesi ayrı bir şey olabilir. Aslında güzel bir seçki yapmışlar ve belirli kısımlarına bunları yüklemişler. Ama bu unsurlar ayrıştırılınca ve analitik bir düşünceye vurulunca anlaşılıyor ki bu müziğin de belli bir maksatla yüklendiği ve belki de burada söylenen ve tam doğru olmayan şeylerin yutturulması amacıyla montajlandığı anlaşılıyor. Şimdi bir tabii diğer hile de bu tür şeyleri yutturmada güzellik temasıdır, kadın temasıdır. Bu tür şeyler hep kullanılabilir propaganda faaliyetlerinde.
Nearly the size of the Earth that may have existed for billions of years. At its north pole is something far, far stranger. Perhaps perhaps the weirdest demonstration of fluid dynamics anywhere in the solar system. A permanent hexagonal cap. Its alien appearance seemingly defies logic. It is unlike anything we have ever seen on Earth. The change in relative wind speeds across Saturn's latitudes are the cause.
Şimdi
Adjacent parts of Saturn's
görsel kısmı var,
atmosphere moving at
konu
different
anlatım
speeds
var, bir de
induce
müzik var.
unstable
Bakın burada
behavior.
üç faz var
In this
burada.
case, a wave-like disturbance.
Üç fazla işliyorlar. Ama bunlar da belli ki birbirini destekleyerek bir etki oluşturma amacıyla üç fazlı gidiyor. Arka planda çalan müzik, konu anlatımı ve hareketli görseller. Üç fazla çalışıyorlar.
This shape and others have been recreated in labs on Earth using nothing more than water, flow gradients, and fluorescent dye. Not so alien after all. Another oddity with Saturn is its magnetic field, which seemingly defies classification. On Jupiter and Earth, the magnetic fields are offset from the rotation axis by around 10 degrees. The traditional logic holds that this tilt is a natural byproduct of how the magnetic field is generated, from currents deep within the planet's interiors. Without some level of interior turbulence, the magnetic fields wouldn't exist. It's the fact that the core is not perfectly aligned with the exterior in both spin and spin rate that generates this flux. Saturn, however, defies this. Its magnetic field is almost perfectly aligned with its rotational axis, perhaps down to just half a degree. Likely for this reason, Saturn's magnetosphere is fairly weak for a planet of its size. While its magnetic field is 600 times the size of the Earth's, overall it is slightly weaker. Saturn is surrounded by a myriad of unique and interesting moons, and thanks to later missions like the Cassini orbiter, we are aware of more moons around Saturn, some 83 and counting, than we are around Jupiter. That isn't to say, of course, there are more, but the quality of our data around Saturn, thanks to Cassini, has surpassed that of our data around Jupiter. The Voyagers observed several of Saturn's incredible moons as they speed through its system. There are, of course, the asteroid-like shepherds of the rings, Pan, Pandora, and Prometheus, Janus, and Epimetheus. These moons are interesting in their own right, but perhaps more so because of the utility they play in maintaining Saturn's stunning cosmic appearance. Further out, of course, you can't miss Mimas, believed to be responsible for the Cassini division. It has a massive impact crater on its leading edge, giving it a Death Star-like appearance. Further out, you reach the E-ring, that mystical outer glow, only visible when looking towards the sun. Within the E-ring orbits a small, icy moon called Enceladus. In 2005, decades after the Voyager flybys, the Cassini probe would discover the connection. Long suspected and finally confirmed, Enceladus has multiple jets of material emanating from its south pole, geyser-like plumes of warm, salty water. Enceladus is ejecting massive amounts of salt water laced with grains of silica-rich sand, nitrogen, and organic molecules, including trace amounts of simple hydrocarbons, to the tune of some 200 kilograms or more every second. The two Voyager probes imaged the northern face of the small moon and missed the geysers, which are almost entirely concentrated near its south pole. However, the fact that Enceladus was embedded in the densest part of the E-ring led many to conclude that the ring was a product of material vented from the moon. Few could have imagined, however, that this material would be ideal for life as we know it. The water coming out of Enceladus's geysers isn't just full of organic compounds and silica sand and simple hydrocarbons. Perhaps most importantly, it's warm, full of thermal energy. The source of this energy is not fully known, since tidal heating can only account for some 10% of it, if that. Enceladus is very,
Ay ışığı
very
sanırım.
small,
Ay ışığı.
with a diameter of just 313 miles, or just over 500 kilometers. Its tiny size and gravity rules out the possibility of a molten core or the presence of heavy radioactive elements deep within. These may have been a factor during its initial formation, but the mystery remains. How has it maintained its heat energy for so long? Direct evidence of warm water geysers originating from a subsurface ocean places Enceladus at the top of the pile in terms of places where life is likely to exist outside of Earth, surpassing Mars and even Europa. Further from Enceladus is icy Tethys, itself covered with impact craters ranging from the small to the colossal. Then, of course, there's rugged Dione, covered in scars and canyons, a world riven by enormous fractures on its trailing hemisphere. As you continue moving outward, the moons seem to get larger. Further still from Dione is its bigger twin, Rhea. Each of these moons an icy, desolate world, their surfaces logging an ancient history of impacts and interactions with rings and debris. But from here things take a dramatic turn. 750,000 miles away, some 1.2 million kilometers out from Saturn, exists its largest and most complex moon. A moon that stands apart, not just in the Saturn system, but in the solar system. For hundreds of years it was known as a fuzzy orange ball,
Evrenin ulu uyuşu bunu
featureless,
önümüze seriyor.
mysterious.
Acaba evrenin ulu mimarını da gösterecek.
Titan is the only moon in our solar system with a real atmosphere. An atmosphere so thick that despite having a surface gravity only slightly less than that of our moon, the atmospheric pressure at Titan's surface is 1.5 times greater than that of sea level on Earth. In short, Titan has a lot of sky. And because of its low gravity, that atmosphere does not cling to its surface as tightly as Earth's does. Instead, it hangs loosely around the moon like a thick outer shell. Because atmospheres get progressively thinner, it's nearly impossible to define a strict upper bound. What you, I, and human law commonly thinks of as space, low Earth orbit, is actually well within its scientifically defined atmosphere. And this is why the ISS, which orbits within the thermosphere layer, requires periodic boosting. But to give you an idea of how much higher Titan's sky rises above its surface, understand that the opaque orange haze that obscures its surface exists at or slightly above an altitude of 200 kilometers. That's over twice as high as the internationally recognized boundary of space, the Kármán line on Earth. And that layer of haze is considered one of the lower layers of Titan's atmosphere.
Titan deyince Türkiye'de
The
belki
two Voyager probes make
toplumsal
valuable
hafızada o
observation
akla
of Titan
gelebilir
in
ama
their time.
burada
But the
bir
details of
gezegen
its
akla
surface will
geliyor.
remain locked away
Varsayımıyla
until, of course,
çekmişler.
Cassini and a small stowaway on its side,
1990'lı
Huygens,
yılların
in
bir
the
çetesi miydi o
mid-2000s.
Titan?
The Huygens probe separated from the Cassini orbiter and became the first
Hey
spacecraft to
diye
enter
el
Titan's
çırparak bir
atmosphere,
onların şeyleri var.
successfully landing on its
Toplantıları.
surface on January 14, 2005. In an ironic twist of fate, a design flaw with Cassini's radio relay firmware led to an issue with Doppler-shifted data transmitted from Huygens, not wholly dissimilar from the issue that plagues Voyager 2. As Huygens descended, it transmitted data over 2 radio channels. Due to a ground sequencing error, Cassini was not listening on one of the 2 frequencies, meaning half the data transmitted from Huygens was lost. Despite being plagued with problems compounded by human error on the ground, the small probe returned the first images of Titan's surface and made invaluable measurements of conditions on the ground. Titan is an incredibly cold world. The temperature at the landing site 180 degrees below 0 Celsius, nearly 300 below Fahrenheit. Amazingly, It's a humid world and has stable bodies of liquid on its surface.
Hey hey de hey hey.
There's lakes,
Gün gün de
clouds,
gün.
even
Öyle
rain.
bir köşe yazarı vardı,
Titan
hala
has weather.
yazıyorum bilmiyorum.
It
Hey
has
hey de
a
hey hey,
climate.
gün gün de gün gün. Ne
It's
dünyalar
liquid
varmış da,
methane.
vay canına.
Titan's atmosphere is over 95% nitrogen gas, but the haze and humidity is from methane gas. 1.5% at high altitude and nearly 5% near the surface. Titan's methane cycle is amazingly similar to Earth's water cycle. It evaporates, rises, condenses, and rains. Methane lakes on Titan are similar in size to the American Great Lakes. They are the only stable bodies of liquid on the surface of a celestial object outside of Earth. Below its opaque haze, Titan has wispy methane clouds. Most of its lakes are concentrated near its poles. These lakes are dark, highly reflective, and very, very cold. There's no risk of fire here, because there's no concentration of oxygen here. Titan has hundreds of times more liquid hydrocarbons than all known oil and gas reserves on Earth. But unlike on the Earth, these formed abiotically, likely a result of ultraviolet radiation from the sun, which knocks hydrogen atoms off of stable methane molecules in the atmosphere to form highly reactive methyl radicals that then react with each other to form more complex compounds like ethane and propane. Endless combinations of carbon and hydrogen that together make up a vast, complex climate on Titan. Conditions on Titan's surface are very close to the triple point of methane, meaning it can coexist as a solid, gas, or liquid, and tiny variations of energy and pressure across small distances can result in phase changes. The exact composition of Titan's lakes are unknown, but it is believed they are a mix, storing the concentrations of the heavier hydrocarbons like propane and ethane, along with a bulk volume of liquid methane. It's even possible that solid methane ice, full of nitrogen gas bubbles, could be floating on the surface of these lakes, but this has not yet been confirmed. The rate of evaporation on Titan is incredibly low, but its thick atmosphere can hold a lot more liquid before rain forms, aided by low gravity. As a result, it is believed that Titan experiences long periods of relative drought, lasting decades or perhaps centuries, followed by torrential hydrocarbon rains and flash floods that impact the surface on a global scale.
And then we flew by Titan, which is the fuzzy ball you see here, which has 50% higher pressure nitrogen atmosphere than here on Earth, but has methane, natural gas, in the atmosphere, not oxygen. So the action of sunlight is to create complex organic molecules which create this haze that cannot be seen through in the visible. Fortunately, the Cassini mission appeared several decades later with a radar system that could look through the cloud, through the haze, and saw that indeed there are lakes of liquid methane, liquid natural gas on this moon, perhaps resembling what the early Earth may have looked like before life evolved.
Observation of Titan was considered a key objective for Voyager 1. So much so that its trajectory around Saturn, optimized specifically for proximity to Titan, prevented it from continuing on to Uranus or Neptune. This is where the journeys of Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 diverge. Throughout the mission, it remained a possibility to retarget Voyager 1 away from Titan and instead use Saturn's gravity to throw it towards Pluto, and it would have arrived in 1986. On August 25th, 1981, as Voyager 2 was in extremely close proximity to Saturn, it's on its side, the outermost planet. It was passed by Neptune at some point during this era of 9 Kelvin. Alternatively, it may be a normal magnetic field that is somehow redirected, an effect called magnet, forming a type of mantle over a small rocky core. A tiny concentration